original was brilliant political satire, and I think Obama's favorite.
He told me that I met Barack Obama twice, and on both times he said, "Oh, election. That's my favorite political film."
Amazing, right?
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Sir, I don't understand.
That's glaringly apparent.
I can't fail this class.
Oh, don't sell yourself short, Mr. Coates. I truly believe that you can.
Every year at Barton Academy, students, faculty, and staff depart the campus for a 2-week winter break. But there are always an unfortunate few who have nowhere to go for the holidays. They're known as the Holdovers.
Mr. Hunnam,
Hello, Mary.
I heard you got stuck with babysitting duty this year. How'd you manage that?
You know, he used to be a student, right? Yeah, that's why he knows how to inflict maximum pain on us.
I thought all the Nazis were hiding in Argentina.
Stifle it, Tully.
You just earned yourself a detention, sir. Being here with you is already one big detention. Son of a bitch, that's another detention.
Do you think I want to be babysitting you? No, I was praying your mother would pick up the phone or your father would arrive in a helicopter or a flying saucer.
My father's dead.
Welcome to Behind the Lens. Today, you certainly know his films from Sideways, Election, The Descendants, Nebraska, Citizen Ruth, About Schmidt, Downsizing. Oh, so many good movies when you look at this list. Not a sequel among them.
Not yet.
3 Best Director Oscar nominations, 2 Oscars for the adapted screenplays of The Descendants and Sideways. And now The Holdovers. This is Alexander Payne. Welcome.
Thank you, thank you.
When I saw the
hello.
Holdovers at our favorite Telluride Film Festival,
Yep.
I went and reviewed it immediately, and my first line was, "Thank God for Alexander Payne."
Thank God for Pete Hammond.
No, I looked at that movie and I go, "Oh my God, it is such a
You're very
pleasure
kind.
to
Thank
see.
you. Thank you.
It is the right movie at the right time, and the kind of movie you don't see often."
So, if I can ask you, why do you think at the right time? Why do you think the right movie at the right time? What does that
Because
mean?
people are looking for something about humanity that, is real, that is about people, that we can relate to. They're not perfect in any way, none of them. They all have their problems, but there is a shared humanity that I think audiences feel when I walked around Telluride and talking to a lot of people, and I said, "What's your favorite movie?" You know how you do that at festivals. What's your favorite movie? Inevitably, that name would come up over and over.
Nice to hear. Thanks for sharing.
And but you know this. You've been called a humanist, and all of that forever, which I know probably makes you wince a little bit. But
No, well, I appreciate whom I think are humanist directors. So. I mean, I think the first time I remember being called that to my memory is Todd McCarthy after Sideways.
Right.
Said something like, "Oh, this is a movie that reinvents humanism," or something like that.
And you go like, "Well, okay, but aren't movies supposed to be about people?"
That's what I thought.
They used to be.
Well, Europeans and Iranians are probably still making films about people, aren't they? Maybe more than Americans.
Yeah.
But also we'd have to say, like, what does it mean to make a film about people? Like, we know we can segregate superhero movies or car chase movies or whatever. But I don't know. Is Breaking Bad about people? Is The Wire about people? Or is that something else because of a certain genre in which they find themselves?
No, those are characters that are, we definitely will relate to in one way or another, no matter how wrong they go morally or otherwise.
And I just saw the wonderful Anatomy of a Fall, for example.
Oh, yeah, right.
And okay, so that's a procedural, and there's a murder, and it's a little bit like a fictionalized version of The Staircase, if you remember The Staircase. Yeah. So there's a certain genre thriller whodunit aspect to it, but it's still about people.
Yeah, exactly.
The relationship discussions in that movie and her performance, very humanist and beautiful, I thought.
I think no matter what genre you go into, I would think it would be impossible for you not to do that. I just don't think that would interest you to.
Well, I'm interested in people. I mean, I think that people who are interested in movies are interested in people. People are interested in history and literature.
Yeah.
Are interested in people. Like, who are we and what are these crazy things we do, and trying to get at why we do them.
Yeah.
And we're gossips. You know,
That's true.
yeah.
It's interesting with the Holdovers. It's only the second of the films you've directed that you didn't have a screenwriting credit on.
Yeah, yeah.
I know you're very involved in the screenplay,
Right.
but you didn't take a credit on this.
Correct.
Why was that? You brought the writer in.
Well, yeah. It's so. This is my 8th feature, as you point out. I haven't had screenplay credit on 2 of them. Each a different case.
Yeah.
Robert Nelson, Bob Nelson on Nebraska. That came to me as a script. Sure, I did some rewriting and that kind of stuff, but it's his vision. And you know, this one was the first time, though, I've, let's say, directed a writer. So I had the idea for the film. The gods brought me David Hemmingson as a writer. I told him the premise. He accepted it. We kind of hashed out the story together, which means he pitched 2, 3, 4, 5 different possible storylines to me. I said yes, no, and then was, you know, giving notes on drafts and doing some rewriting myself. But even though I'm the Aristotelian prime mover of the script, I still feel that he brought so much to it, and he wrote it.
Yeah.
I didn't write it. I helped, but he wrote it.
Yeah. And this actually was inspired. You are a master of movie knowledge.
As are you.
And Malus,
Yes.
the Marcel Pagnol
Right.
film, which I think you saw at Telluride,
At
right?
Telluride, right. A lesser-known Pagnol film, 1935, and it has the same setup, which is a disliked professor with a wonky eye is asked to take care of the boys with nowhere to go over Christmas break at the boarding school at which he teaches, and he eventually has a special relationship with one of those boys.
Right.
So that's all I had,
Yeah.
which is a lot, by the
Yeah.
way, but that's what I had. That movie goes in a different direction, but I thought that was a good premise for a movie, and Hemmingson thought so too.
And this is, this shocked me too. It's your first period movie that you
Can't wait to do more.
Yeah.
Can't wait to do more.
It's like you enjoy it's more expensive usually to recreate everything, but what is it about period movies you hadn't done, you had never ventured into?
It just hadn't come up yet,
Mm-hmm.
which surprised me because I was a history major in college, and I read a lot of history, and I daydream about going back in time, not into the future, but back in time. And then finally it made sense on this film, and I had a ball doing it.
Yeah.
In no small matter because when I got on set, I could pretend I was back in 1970 making a movie then.
Yeah. Like you're suddenly Hal Ashby.
Well, no, I'm suddenly Alexander Payne.
Ah.
Had I been working then.
Ah.
You know,
that's
not
pretty
to take your question too literally.
Yeah.
But
oh, that's cool.
And
That's
I
cool.
think it kind of helped the aesthetic of the film too, because the production designer felt the same, and we kept telling ourselves we're not making a period film, we're making a contemporary film.
Yeah.
We're just in 1970.
In 1970.
But I had a blast doing it. And I think too, even from the period films we like, when you put something in the past, it adds somehow to a sense of timelessness to the film, or eternal, or memory, or I don't know what, but there's another quality that's evoked.
Well,
I think it's beautiful that The Godfathers are period films,
right.
You know, made in the early 70s, but taking place, I mean, starting in the 40s and then going to the 50s for the contemporary stories, and then going even farther back in time, the 19-teens.
Yeah.
But it's so beautiful.
It's great to see, you know, and it feels like the movies that I saw then. I think I said it in my review. I felt like I was back standing in line, in long lines.
For the sterile cuckoo, you said.
Sterile cuckoo. I don't know why it reminds. Well, you know what? That has elements of drama and comedy and blends it brilliantly.
I've never seen it.
Oh my God, you got to see it.
That's a Mulligan picture, isn't it? Robert Mulligan.
Yes, and it's Alvin Sargent.
Uh-huh.
You know.
And And Liza Minnelli's kind of first big part, right?
It was one of it was her first major starring role.
Predates
She got an
Cabaret.
Oscar nomination for it.
Yeah.
But she has an incredible phone conversation just on
right,
one thing, you know, that she really is talented as an actor. She didn't always get that credit. But it reminded me of that, The Paper Chase.
Yeah, that's a more obvious comparison. I think.
And Hal Ashby. A lot of people keep bringing up Last Detail and things. What do you think? You know, when you make a movie like this, and you know, what inspired you filmically there of things you saw maybe then?
Well, the name Hal Ashby keeps coming up, and it's flattering, but I also don't want to dwell on it too much.
But he did make a series of those kind of movies. I mean, I guess we're just going back that far to find the last filmmakers that would do this kind of thing over and over.
I do adore The Landlord.
Yes. That was
His perhaps least seen of his 1970s, his miraculous 1970s string of films. And I do adore The Last Detail.
Yeah.
And David Hemmingson, the writer, does as well.
Ah.
And this movie maybe does have a few things in common with The Last Detail.
Yeah.
Three people, a love story among three people.
Yeah.
In which there's a younger character who may or may not be on his way somewhere. They take a road trip. It involves Boston. You know, there's some kind of superficial similarities.
Yeah, but
a hooker shows up at some point.
Well, you're going to keep listing on.
Yeah, I'll stop here.
And now it's going to play on a double bill at the New Beverly someday,
right.
Speaking of the three characters, so it took all this time to get back together with Paul Giamatti. I had heard at one time you were thinking of him for downsizing.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, but that didn't work, and so finally you guys have gotten back together in a movie.
And I wish it had happened sooner, but I'm a little slow with screenplays.
Yeah.
And so I'm not didn't have as many whacks at it, but it finally worked out very well. We're both very happy with the result, and we were so happy working together, Pete.
Yeah,
it's a marriage made in heaven.
Talked to him briefly last night at this event for this movie,
Right.
and he said the same thing. He said he was just so happy and so excited the strike was over, so he can go out and talk about it, and you know, all of those things. But he's so perfect in this. You know, when you see somebody like Paul Giamatti do a role like this, you cannot imagine anybody else.
So I've been thinking about that. Like, who else could have played that part? And no one whom I can think of in contemporary movies, but historically, here's whom I've thought of. Charles Lawton.
Okay. Yeah.
Again, they'd all be different, but equally valid.
Yeah, I could see
Edward G. Robinson.
He'd be great. Yep.
Monty Woolley.
Monty, whoa. Yeah. Whoa. Okay.
Monty Woolley. Somebody said to me the other day, Richard Dreyfuss. Yeah, maybe. But I like Lawton or Robinson.
Yeah, Richard Dreyfuss in Mr. Holland's Opus.
That's true. That's
different
true.
kind of. He was a lovable teacher. The students loved him and everything, but that's not this.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he's so good in this. So I talked to your young actor. Tell how you found this guy, because Dominic Sessa is, when you say the word a natural, he's really a natural because he's never acted in front of a camera.
Correct.
But he's a natural.
He's gifted.
Yeah.
He's really gifted. I've told the story a bunch of times by now. Happy to share it again with your viewers, which is that the New York-based casting director Susan Shopmaker and she fielded about 800 auditions.
Wow.
Found some of the other parts, didn't find the lead. As the auditions continued to trickle in, we pulled the trigger on a plan, which we were going to do anyway, even out of politeness, which is contact the schools where I actually was going to be shooting, call up the drama teacher and say, hey, you got any actors there who would like to be in a movie? Well, I picked up two actors, one a kid for a bit part and the lead.
Oh, wow.
And he was a star in the drama department, but he had never even auditioned for a movie. He'd never been in that was all a foreign world to him. He wanted to be an actor, still wants to. He was a senior at Deerfield Academy, now being cast to play a junior at essentially Deerfield Academy. He was applying to NYU, Carnegie Mellon, I think Brandeis. He's now a sophomore at Carnegie Mellon in their prestigious acting program.
Yeah.
And it took maybe 8 auditions to get to the point where I felt comfortable that he could do it.
Yeah.
We knew he had this essence in him, but to really start to see a relaxed film actor emerge, you know, like molt out of that crust of his, and he did. And then the final audition, I had him and Paul Giamatti on Zoom together.
Oh wow.
And that's where I really saw. I never do what they call chemistry reads, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But in this was a special case to see to what degree, because we knew that Paul, off camera, was going to have to some degree the same mentor-protege relationship that the teacher-student would have on camera.
Sure.
So I kind of wanted to see the beginnings of that. And Paul was only 2 who believed in this kid's talent as well. I was only too happy to say, yeah, I'm happy to help bring him along. But within the first few days, Dominic didn't even really need our help. He was so good.
Just able to do it.
And good technically, hitting his marks and knowing his dialogue back and forth. And like the day 1 of shooting, he had to act to, as you may know, to a piece of white paper tape on the matte box.
Right.
You know, for the look to someone. This is a technical thing.
Yeah.
And he did it. Just like, and I asked him at one point, I said, so Dominic, how is it that you're able, like you've never done this before. How are you doing something I couldn't do,
Yeah.
which is come in here and ignore the lights and the camera and all these bearded men with walkie-talkies and just like focus and do something intimate. How do you do that? And he goes, well, I just don't think about any of that stuff.
Which is the
right answer. That's the right answer.
I should go in acting classes or something because that's actually a good piece of advice from somebody like.
But hard to do.
Yeah.
Hard to do and not be made self-conscious about all that stuff.
So when I met him, and I asked him what kind of great direction did you get from Alexander Payne, he said something really interesting. He says he sort of directs in movies. Like he says, I'll give you an example. The liquor store scene. He said, think of Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. And
I don't remember that at all.
Yeah. And I'm going like, so do you go out and rent the movie or something? But he said, yeah, you were talking, you know, like giving examples of things that you might have been looking for.
I remember one time years ago, I was doing the Descendants. And there's a scene where George Clooney and Shailene Woodley have kind of some banter back and forth. And I said, you know, it's kind of like Annie Hall. It's like, you know, it's like Woody Allen and Diane Keaton.
Yeah.
She'd never seen any of those movies. So I couldn't direct in movies at that point.
Oh my God, that's so funny. Well, he went out and rented Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, whatever it was. When I think of that, I think of Jimmy Stewart, you know.
I'm going to have to ask him about that. I don't remember that
it's
at all.
It's the first thing he said, the liquor store scene.
Usually my direction is, please hit your marks and recite your dialogue exactly as written.
You don't want much improvisation once the script is locked?
No.
You don't? Okay.
Never.
Yeah. Why is that?
We work hard on those screenplays.
Yeah, that's right. Speaking of screenplays, you have done a lot of adaptations. Your Oscars came for adaptations. What about...
Just like Robert Bolt.
Yeah. Well, what about that is like something you like to do in terms of screenwriting?
Well, writing is so hard, and it's so lovely to kind of inherit a world.
Yeah.
Where some basic decisions, it's not all page blanche.
Yeah.
Some basic decisions have been made for you. And when I do an adaptation, it's usually from a writer who's suggesting a world I myself never could have thought of.
Yeah.
Like I never could have thought of 2 loser dudes who go wine tasting the week before one of them is going to get married. I could have never thought about a wealthy scion in Hawaii who's dealing with a inheritance land issue with his family at the same time that his wife is dying, and he just learns out that she had been cuckolding him. But these are stories that interest me.
Yeah.
So I'm able to kind of parachute in and work those stories and have a dialogue with the stories, like even, you know, like in the narrative. Well, I don't like this. This should have happened.
Right.
You know, or I can put in a personal experience here, and It's a lot of fun. Let's not forget that almost all 13, 12 of Stanley Kubrick's 13 features were adaptations.
Right, I know,
I think he had the same, not to speak for Mr. Kubrick, but that same fascination with splashing around in someone else's world.
Yeah, one of
It
your
doesn't make the film any less personal.
no, one of your earlier ones was Election,
Yeah.
which I'm hearing is going to spark your first sequel of movies you've directed.
If we do it.
If you do, well, that's
if
always
we
the
do it.
question.
So yeah, Tom Perrotta, who wrote Election, has written a very fine sequel called Tracy Flick Can't Win.
And that's based on another book by the same author, or
That is the book.
that is the book.
The book,
okay.
the second book
Yeah,
in
the
the
second
Tracy
book.
Flick series is called
Tracy Flick Can't
Win,
Win.
right? So Reese would like to do it. The producers, Albert and Ron, would like to do it. Jim Taylor and I would like to do it. If we can kind of find our way in, because the book doesn't suggest a ready adaptation. We'd have to fiddle around with it a little bit, as we had to do somewhat with the original.
Yeah.
So we're figuring out if we want to do that or not.
The original was a brilliant political satire, and I think Obama's favorite.
He told me that I met Barack Obama twice, and on both times he said, "Oh, Election, that's my favorite political film."
Amazing, right?
Yeah.
That's so cool. That's a sequel I really want to see. First, I thought she was brilliant in that movie. And
Yeah.
my wife totally identifies with her.
How so?
Because she says that's the way I was. I was very
Ambitious and
yeah, and
single-minded.
all of that, and way on a different wavelength than the other students.
Right.
In every way, she just loves that character and that movie. That's something to look for. What else? I heard you want to do westerns. You want to stay in the period world.
Another reason to make period films is to avoid clearance, legal clearance. Like clearance on movies drives me crazy. What the legal departments make you, the hoops they make you jump through. They're really insane and anti-cinema.
Oh no!
So you encounter fewer of those making period films.
Ah.
So I get less mad.
But you've always wanted to do a western.
I have. I've kind of thought for decades, like, yeah, it's nice I'm making these little comedies, but my true path is westerns. And Jim Taylor, bless his heart, my usual co-writer, doesn't share that same interest very much. But in David Hemmingson, who wrote this one, The Holdovers, I found a collaborator who would like to make a western. So we're talking about it now.
Oh, cool.
And thinking about the stars for whom we want to write, because you really have to have movie stars when you do a western just to get the financing. You didn't have to back in the old days, but nowadays you do.
Oh yeah. No, I saw a thing on A-Frame. Speaking of westerns, they ask you your 5 movies you'd recommend or 5 movies.
Yeah, I think I recommended 2 westerns.
You definitely did, and this is what I love talking to Alexander Payne about, because there's movies that I haven't seen that it makes me the way.
Well, and I want recommendations from you too, Pete.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, well, I've been watching, but Westward, The Women was fascinated me. Robert Teller. I remember seeing that on NBC's Saturday Night at the Movies.
Wow.
That used to be in network shows where they
Right,
had
of
movies,
course.
and I so remembered that movie.
What's your memory of it?
This guy taking these women, literally what the title says, and I'd never seen a movie in a Western format like that. And
But did you saw it as a kid? Do you remember liking it?
I remembered liking the movie, and it had commercials and everything, so it's not the ideal way. I have not seen it since, but this is the first time I've seen it mentioned anywhere. Yeah.
A guy named Jim Healy, who used to be head of programming at Rochester, at the Eastman House in Rochester. He's now at University of Madison, Wisconsin. He turned me onto the film.
Oh, wow.
And he showed me Dory Sherry's own personal print.
Who was the head of MGM and all of that.
Which had probably never been screened.
Wow.
Only a couple of times. And I just couldn't believe how good that movie was. And then a year or two later, I was shooting Downsizing up in Toronto, and Cameron Bailey of TIFF asked me to program a film. I said, we've got to show Westward the Women. So we pulled that very same print.
Oh, wow.
And it blew everybody there away.
Wow.
And it's, do you want to talk about it, or you want to go?
Well, I've got others too,
Okay.
but I'm going to watch it. That's
Yeah,
what
please do.
Ride the High Country, which is many people cite as, this is early Sam Peckinpah. I remember this too. It opened as a second feature. You know, they used to have double features, and it would be whatever the main one they thought was.
Do you remember what the top of the bill
I
was?
don't remember specifically, but it was 1962.
Here's a trivia question.
Yeah.
You probably know this one. Magnificent Ambersons was the bottom part of a double bill with what film?
I don't know.
Mexican Spitfire Sees a Ghost.
I never would have gotten that. That's unbelievable.
Yeah, Lupe Velez got
That's
top billing
unbelievable.
over Orson Welles.
Wow, well,
Yeah.
maybe it'll come back. I interviewed a guy once who's trying to find it in Brazil right now, the uncut version, which is, you know, it's kind of like not
Yeah, that
likely.
would be yeah.
Not likely. I really thought this was interesting. Make Way for Tomorrow, Leo McCarey, 1937.
Well, you know that film.
I know the film, and I forgot that he won the Oscar the same year for The Awful Truth, and went up and said, "You give it to the wrong movie."
Yeah, you've given it to me for the wrong movie.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, these are movies that you have It Happen One Night, which is, of course, everybody's seen.
But it's worth seeing again.
Yes.
I mean, when I've been asked to do, so Alamo Drafthouse asked me for a film list, Landmark Films asked me for a film list. You know, it's one of these things they do for like promotional, to promote the Holdovers. Oh, Alexander, would you know, I'm sure they're asking other filmmakers the same. I'm always happy to do that more than talk about the Holdovers, because I'd rather be talking about other people's movies than my
I think
own.
it's interesting because, in a way, when you're talking about these movies that inspired you, influenced you, whatever they did, you are talking about the Holdovers, because you're talking you're talking about these movies that may be overlooked or something, but have somewhere in your DNA.
If we get back to that word humanity, all of these films have a profound. I mean, you see Make Way for Tomorrow.
Yeah.
I think Make Way for Tomorrow is up there with Michael Haneke's Amour.
Oh, wow.
Which is, these are two films made by a director who profoundly understands life.
Yeah.
And I think with both these movies, Make Way for Tomorrow and Amour, you could show them to people 5,000 years in the past and 5,000 years in the future, God willing. And people would watch it and say, yep, that's how life is.
That's getting right back to the very first thing we talked about in this interview, was basic humanity.
Yeah, basic
It's
humanity.
never, it could have been made as when this one's in the 30s, you know, and still have resonance.
But these are film works of art that somehow cut to the essence of life. Let's add Our Town, Thornton Wilder's Our Town. You just watch those two movies I just mentioned in Our Town, at least for my taste anyway, my sensibility, and they just cut to the essence, a profound and even uncomfortably profound essence of what life is on this planet.
Yeah, and that's well, that's why I said thank God for Alexander Payne, because you get it, and you know you're still doing it.
Thanks, Pete. Always love talking to you.
Thanks,
always,
man.
always.
Thanks for joining.
Wait, let's share one last anecdote between him and me.
Okay.
This goes back to 03 or 05, I don't know what year. We were both in Cannes.
Yes, that's
and we
true.
bumped into each other in Cannes.
Yeah.
And Cannes finished, and we flew back to LA.
Yeah, yes.
And 12 hours later, we bumped into each other in downtown LA at one of the old cinemas of the last remaining seats,
a big thing.
Pillow Talk. I forget.
It was Pillow Talk.
Pillow Talk.
It was. There you were.
Like we were exhausted, but we still made it downtown to see some old movie.
You said you had landed like 5 hours earlier or something, and there you were in this old theater watching Pillow Talk. But we had to.
We had to.
That's Alexander Payne.
That's Pete Hammond.
Thanks,
All right, man. Thank you.